Take a slow, steady breath with me. Imagine we're all standing on a road littered with the remnants of our mistakes, moments we regret, misjudgments we wish we could take back, heartbreaks or letdowns we didn't see coming. We stand together, looking at these scattered fragments that represent our failures. It's easy to focus on the cracks, the ugliness, the guilt or shame they bring. But if we step closer, if we study them with a calm, reflective eye, we might discover something else. These fragments are more than just remnants of where we stumbled. They can be the raw materials for our greatest growth. They can become evidence of our resilience, signposts that direct us to new paths, and teachers that point out truths we hadn't seen before. And in that shift of perspective, we find the Stoic wisdom that teaches us to welcome what we cannot control and to shape it into something that serves our inner development. Let's remind ourselves that none of us are alone in experiencing failure. Marcus Aurelius, ruling as Emperor of Rome, faced immeasurable challenges, military, political, personal. Yet, in his private reflections, we find him wrestling with everyday human issues: impatience, frustration, disappointment. In his meditations, he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." It's a reminder that the meaning we assign to our failures often creates more suffering than the failure itself. When we learn to see disappointment not as a final judgment on who we are, but as a momentary condition we can respond to and learn from, we empower ourselves to move forward more wisely. The Stoic perspective on self-control. We can think of our experiences of failure as stepping stones, each one leading us to greater awareness of ourselves. Together, we explore how to transform those missteps into lessons that refine our character. From a Stoic perspective, adversity is an integral part of life. Without it, how would we learn patience, humility, or resilience? Failure is not a black mark on our worthiness. It's an occasion that reveals to us where our strengths lie and where we can strengthen further. It's a sacred mirror, reflecting back our blind spots and offering us the chance to address them. If we lean into this idea, we start to see that failure can be a powerful teacher in the realm of self-control. Moments of loss or setbacks often provoke intense emotions: anger, fear, even despair. But as Epictetus famously said, it is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them. That wave of frustration we feel when we fail can be interpreted as the world being unfair, or it can be interpreted as a signal that we care deeply about something. Our reaction is our choice. We can rant against the unfairness, or we can calmly examine what went wrong, what assumptions we made, and how we might do better next time. When we adopt the stance of a curious observer rather than a victim, failure transforms from a dreaded outcome to an illuminating teacher, building resilience in the face of adversity. None of this means we won't feel pain when we fail. That would be unrealistic. Stoicism is sometimes misunderstood as emotional suppression, but it's more about mindful management of our emotions. Feeling disappointment or embarrassment is natural. What matters is how we respond next. Do we spiral into self-pity, or do we use the energy of our feelings as motivation to act more skillfully in the future? Failure can spark bitterness or transformation. Our perspective and intentions will decide which path we take. Together, we can encourage one another to use that spark to illuminate the road ahead, rather than burn ourselves with regret. Let's explore further how failure can refine our resilience. Resilience, in the Stoic sense, is born from understanding that many external things are beyond our control. We may strive for a certain outcome, pour our hearts into a project or relationship, yet still watch it fall apart. This can be crushing if our sense of worth is tied to external success. But imagine we shift our perspective to focus on our own efforts, our own integrity, and how we handle adversity. Then, regardless of whether we succeed or fail outwardly, we maintain a stable sense of self. We learn that our perseverance, our willingness to rise again, is the true measure of success. Seneca once wrote, sometimes even to live, is an act of courage. That courage finds its home in resilience, in the refusal to let external circumstances define our inner state. When we look at resilience through the lens of failure, we see that each failure is an opportunity to practice bouncing back. If we encounter an obstacle and collapse into despair, we lose the chance to develop greater inner strength. But if we view the obstacle as an exercise station, a place to train our ability to stand up, brush ourselves off and move forward, then the experience becomes valuable. We've worked out a mental muscle that might have otherwise remained weak. Over time, we cultivate a spirit that can endure far more than we'd ever imagined. Personal growth through failure. Failure also has a deep role to play in our personal growth. Often, failing at something reveals gaps in our knowledge or in our approach. It can highlight areas where we lack certain skills, maybe communication, planning, or emotional regulation. It can show us that we've been living someone else's goals instead of our own. Or it could reveal that our priorities need re-evaluation. When we see failure as data, rather than a sentence handed down by some external judge, we free ourselves to examine what went wrong and why. We begin to chart a path toward improvement that's firmly grounded in reality, not in wishful thinking. Think about how children learn to walk. They fall again and again, each time adjusting their balance, their stride, or the timing of their steps. They don't interpret the fall as evidence of their unworthiness to walk. Instead, they keep going. They adapt naturally because they don't carry the mental baggage that says, "I failed once, so I must be a failure." When we return to that childlike perspective, we see failure as a natural part of the learning process. We don't let it weigh us down with shame. Instead, we harness it as feedback. This approach is so much kinder to ourselves, and ironically, it's also far more effective at helping us achieve our goals. Learning from our relationships. At times, failure can feel especially harsh in our relationships with others. Whether in friendships, family bonds, or romantic connections, we might find ourselves disappointed or hurting because of misunderstandings, betrayals, or unmet expectations. Stoicism encourages us to remember that we cannot control the actions of others. We can only shape our own responses and intentions. When a relationship stumbles, maybe we fail to communicate properly, or we fail to show up in the way our loved one needed. We can interpret that failure as a sign we're unlovable or as a door to insight. Perhaps we discover that we weren't truly present, or that our assumptions about the other person prevented real empathy. If we view the situation through the eyes of Stoicism, we find a chance to refine our character, to communicate more mindfully, and to let go of blaming ourselves for what is not ours to control. Our relationships become workshops for virtue, where failures can hone our patience, compassion, and willingness to see from another perspective. Failure in relationships can also highlight our attachment to approval or validation. We may realize we're seeking love or attention to fill an insecurity within ourselves. When that doesn't come, it can feel like a failure. But from a Stoic standpoint, this moment can be an invitation to look inward and ask, what do we believe we lack? Where can we cultivate our own sense of wholeness without depending on external validation? This introspection can be life-changing, leading us to nurture a deeper self-respect. In that process, we discover that our relationships flourish not because we manipulate them to give us what we crave, but because we bring a fuller version of ourselves to the table, one that is self-aware, honest, and genuinely caring. The power of reflection. Throughout this journey, let's also remember the power of self-reflection. Failure, however painful, provides fertile ground for introspection. Seneca wrote, "A man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is." This suggests that how we interpret our experiences shapes our happiness or misery. In moments of failure, it's easy to slip into the mindset of, "This is terrible, I'll never recover." But we have a choice. We can step back, reflect on what happened, and become more aware of our mental stories. Are we telling ourselves that one failed exam, one lost job, or one painful breakup defines our entire worth? If so, we can challenge that thought. We can decide to rewrite the narrative, seeing these moments as temporary setbacks or stepping stones toward a wiser, more capable self. Part of this self-reflection involves acknowledging where we might have contributed to the failure. We might notice patterns. Perhaps we procrastinated, allowed fear to guide our decisions, or had unrealistic expectations. Identifying these patterns may be uncomfortable, but it's a vital step toward transformation. Once we see them, we can work to change them. This is the heart of the Stoic approach, harnessing every situation, even failure, as a chance to grow more aligned with reason, virtue, and clarity. Instead of letting our mistakes haunt us, we can let them shape us into better versions of ourselves. The strength of community and shared humanity. Now let's talk about the role of community in this shared process. While Stoicism emphasizes individual responsibility for our minds, it also recognizes our interconnectedness. None of us live in a vacuum. Our failures impact those around us, and the support we receive can help us navigate those difficult times. When we fail, it can be tempting to isolate ourselves out of shame or embarrassment, but there is power in embracing our common humanity. When we see others stumble, we may gain compassion for them, and thus also for ourselves. If we can create a culture within our families, workplaces, and friendships where failure is seen not as a point of ridicule, but as a natural part of striving and learning, we cultivate an environment where resilience thrives. We collectively elevate one another by acknowledging that none of us are perfect and that each failure can become part of a larger journey toward improvement. Maybe we can visualize it, each of us walking along this road, occasionally tripping, sometimes falling face first into the dirt. Yet we extend a hand to one another, help each other stand, and continue forward with a shared sense of purpose. That's the Stoic vision of community, not in the sense of pity, but in the recognition that we are fellow travelers who inevitably miss a step once in a while. Each time, we learn a little more about how to keep our balance. All this talk about resilience, self-control, and personal growth may inspire us, but let's not pretend it's always easy. In the heat of a failure, we can feel overwhelmed by negative thoughts. We might question our competency, our future, even our worth as a person. In these moments, it can help to remember Marcus Aurelius's perspective. Focus on what is in our power. We can't change the past. We can't force the outcome we hoped for. But we can control our interpretation. We can revisit the situation and extract the lesson. We can make a plan to improve. We can practice patience with ourselves as we heal from the sting of disappointment. By doing so, we exercise the very essence of Stoic discipline, using our rational mind to navigate emotional turmoil and steady our course. Authenticity in a curated world. At times, our environment may not encourage this mindset. Social media often presents curated success stories, fueling the illusion that everyone else is winning. We may feel pressured to hide our failures as if they were something shameful. But consider this. When we see others share their true struggles and bounce back from them, we often feel inspired. We see them as courageous, authentic, and human. Perhaps we can extend the same grace to ourselves. If we treat our own failures with understanding and curiosity, we won't fear them so much. Failure becomes less of a final verdict and more of a creative challenge. Another aspect of failure is that it can remind us of our limitations. We realize we can't do everything perfectly, and that's actually liberating in its own way. It nudges us toward humility, a trait highly valued by Stoics. Epictetus taught that wisdom grows from knowing what is within our power and what isn't. When we face a failure, we might discover that we were trying to control something that ultimately isn't in our hands. Recognizing that boundary is a pivotal step toward inner peace. We let go of futile struggles and focus instead on what we can influence: our mindset, our efforts, our values, and how we choose to show up again. The power of humility and compassion. By accepting our limitations, we also become more compassionate toward ourselves and others. We see that we're all humans trying to navigate uncertain paths. We see that perfection is a mirage and that stumbling is part of the deal. This humility doesn't mean we aim low. Rather, we aim high with the understanding that we may fall short. And when we do fall short, we regroup, adjust, and grow. This cycle of aspiration, failure, learning, and renewed effort can become a driving force in our lives, pushing us to reach new heights while remaining grounded in our shared humanity. Let's keep weaving these ideas together. When we try to apply them in real life, we might begin with a small moment of failure, perhaps an argument with a loved one where we lost our temper. We can sit with it afterward, acknowledging the mistake without drowning in self-criticism. We can ask ourselves, what triggered me? Which part of this situation was in my control? And what can I do better next time? By reframing the failure as a learning experience, we might uncover a habit of defensiveness or a tendency to jump to conclusions. That revelation is gold. It's the signpost that shows us where to cultivate more emotional regulation or where to practice listening. Gradually, our future conversations improve and our relationships deepen. The initial failure has become a catalyst for something constructive. Similarly, in professional life, we may face setbacks, a project that didn't work out, a promotion that slipped away, or an entire venture that went under. These are not uncommon stories. Many successful people have portfolios of failure hidden behind their public achievements. But let's not hide them. Let's learn from them. Each misstep can highlight weaknesses in strategy or execution, blind spots in market research, or even a mismatch between our passion and our chosen field. By studying these elements, we sharpen our sense of direction. We gain clarity about where we need to invest effort or training. And if we choose to pivot, we do so with valuable experience under our belt, making us far more equipped for the next challenge. Adversity as an opportunity to practice virtue. There's a concept in Stoicism that adversity is an opportunity to practice virtue. Failure can be one of those forms of adversity. It calls on us to practice patience, courage, humility, and perseverance. If we never encountered failure, we wouldn't have these chances to grow in these virtues. This understanding can turn our perspective around. Instead of dreading failure, we might, even if just a little, welcome its lessons, knowing that it's a natural ingredient in the recipe for wisdom and personal development. In a sense, failure can shape our identity in a positive way if we let it. We become the person who can handle setbacks with composure, who can adapt with creativity, who can maintain dignity even when external circumstances crumble. That's powerful, not just in an image sense, but in how it genuinely feels to navigate life. When we realize we can endure missteps without losing our sense of self-worth, we discover true freedom. We aren't beholden to success or external markers of achievement. We become anchored in our capacity to grow and our commitment to our principles. Transformative power redefining failure. Yet let's be clear, practicing these ideals is a lifelong endeavor. None of us master them perfectly. Even the greatest Stoic thinkers had moments of turmoil and doubt, but they kept coming back to the core belief that our minds are our own domain. And within that domain, we hold the power to interpret and respond to life's events. When we slip up, when we fail, we renew that commitment to looking inward and learning from the situation. Over time, these habits become more natural. We start to anticipate potential pitfalls, not out of paranoia, but out of a realistic understanding of human limitations. We also develop an inner resource, a reservoir of calm confidence, knowing that yes, we might fail, and if we do, we will survive and learn from it. It might help to remember that we are all in this together, traversing the path of trial and error. When we acknowledge our shared vulnerability, we can comfort and support each other, rather than compete or judge. That sense of unity can make failures more bearable and learning more effective. We create a collective growth mindset. If someone around us fails, we can ask, "What did you learn? How can I help?" rather than standing in judgment. As we practice this, we build communities, online, in our neighborhoods, or within our closest circles, where failure is not feared or hidden, but recognized as an integral step on the road to mastery. Sometimes in the moment of failure, we need a nudge or a reminder to see it from the Stoic perspective. A helpful practice can be keeping a journal. This is something many Stoics, ancient and modern, recommend. At the end of the day, we might write down our setbacks, how we felt, and what we can learn. The act of writing it out can create mental space and perspective. We capture the raw emotion, but we also have a chance to analyze it calmly. Over time, patterns emerge. We might see that certain types of failures trigger us more intensely, or that we repeatedly overlook the same warning signs. This insight is priceless. It's the clue that leads us to make tangible changes in our behavior or mindset, our shared journey of growth and community support. For some, meditation or simple mindfulness practice helps. Just taking a few minutes to breathe and observe our thoughts can reduce the initial sting of failure, giving us enough distance to see the big picture. We might realize that in the grand scheme of things, this single failure is just one small event. It doesn't define our life, though it can enrich it with lessons. We can remind ourselves, I am not my failure. I am a person who is continually learning to do better. Another potent exercise can be reframing. When failure strikes, we consciously ask, what is this teaching me? At first, our mind might resist. We may only see disappointment. But if we stay with the question, we often find a lesson, or several. Maybe it's teaching us to prepare more thoroughly next time. Maybe it's teaching us to let go of unrealistic expectations. Maybe it's teaching us that we need to communicate our needs more clearly. By actively looking for these lessons, we transform our relationship with failure from something destructive to something constructive. Over time, this approach to failure changes how we pursue our goals in the first place. We become more open to experimentation and risk. We stop letting the fear of failure dictate our actions, because we know that if we do fail, there's a pathway forward, a method to glean insights and emerge stronger. This can liberate our creativity and sense of possibility. We might try new things, innovate in our careers, or take bold steps in our personal lives that we would have shied away from before, all because we trust our ability to handle the potential downside. Mindfulness and the art of reframing. As we move through life with this perspective, our definition of failure itself may evolve. We might start to see true failure not as falling short of a certain result, but as a refusal to learn or grow from the challenges we face. In that sense, the only real failure is stagnation, the unwillingness to adapt. Every other failure is an experience, a rung on the ladder of progress, a test of our virtues. And that shift in definition can be profoundly liberating. It means our sense of success or failure resides in how we approach each day, each task, each interaction, rather than in a final outcome. This mindset naturally fosters greater self-control, resilience, personal growth, and better relationships, those key areas of life we've been weaving through this conversation. We become less reactive when mistakes happen, because we recognize them as part of the journey rather than a catastrophic endpoint. We maintain a steadier emotional balance, focusing on what we can control, our effort, our perspective, our response, instead of agonizing over external factors. We see ourselves growing with each lesson learned, and we become more empathetic to others who falter, strengthening our bonds and forming communities that thrive on mutual understanding. By now, we've traveled some distance together, reflecting on failure through a Stoic lens. We've seen how it can challenge us, refine our virtues, and deepen our sense of humanity. We've recognized that failure, while painful, is a universal experience that can unite us if we let it. We've touched on practical ways to cope, from journaling to mindfulness to community support. The crux of it all lies in our perspective. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Failure is that impediment. It stands in the way of our ambitions, our pride, or our sense of certainty. But in doing so, it shows us the path to true mastery of self and of our craft. It clarifies our weaknesses so we can address them. It humbles us so we remain open to learning. It builds our empathy so we don't isolate ourselves from others. Our journey doesn't end here, of course. We'll face more failures. Some may feel trivial, others may rock us to our core. But each time we can remember this. Failure is not a conclusion. It's an event. And we have the power to interpret that event in a way that propels us forward. The wisdom of Stoicism shines most brightly in the dark. When things fall apart, it teaches us to remain centered, to extract the lesson, to stand again and resume our journey with a deeper sense of who we are and who we can become. Let's step away from this reflection with a sense of renewed courage. Let's embrace the possibility that we might fail in our next endeavor. And let's refuse to let that possibility paralyze us. Instead, we can meet failure with the clear-eyed resolve of someone who understands its purpose. We learn from it. We grow. And in the process, we strengthen the ties that bind us in our shared humanity, each of us striving to lead a life of purpose, clarity, and virtue. This is how we transform failure into our greatest teacher, by choosing to see it not as a life sentence, but as a guiding mentor, always inviting us to evolve.